Every empire tells itself a comforting story. Spain believed it had discovered a shortcut to permanent greatness, ships loaded with silver, kings chosen by God, a mission blessed by the Church. For a brief century, it looked untouchable. Its flags flew over half the known world. Its enemies paid in blood and gold. Its rulers assumed this would last. It didn't. Within a few generations, the same empire that dominated Europe was drowning in debt, dependent on foreign manufacturers, fighting unwinnable wars, and losing the very territories that funded its rise. The Spanish Empire did not suddenly collapse. It declined in slow, predictable steps that felt manageable while they were happening, until they weren't. This is the story of that decline. In 15 hidden facts most people inside the empire never clearly saw. Not gossip, not trivia. Structural weaknesses that turned the world's richest monarchy into a weakened power. Watch how easy money became a trap, how prestige cost more than Spain could pay, and how decline always feels temporary until the very end. Hidden fact 1. Spain got rich faster than it got stable in the late 1400s and early 1500s. Spain was still stitching itself together from separate kingdoms, Castile, Aragon, Navarre, and others with different laws, privileges, and institutions. Before that internal consolidation was complete, news arrived from the Atlantic, new lands, new mines, new streams of precious metal. Suddenly, the crown controlled enormous resource flows without having built the administrative capacity to handle them. A medieval system was asked to manage a global empire. Silver and gold poured in long before Spain had modern tax systems, reliable data, or disciplined bureaucracy. Luck arrived before readiness. That timing mattered. Treasure did not land on a well-organized state that knew where to invest and how to plan. It fell into a structure that confused cash with strength. Instead of funding deep reforms, early wealth masked the weaknesses that would later drag Spain down. Hidden. Fact 2. The empire fought like it was always on the edge of survival. Spain's rulers saw Europe as a chessboard where every move threatened catastrophe. France in the west, the Ottomans in the east, Protestant rebels in the north. Each opponent looked like the first step toward disaster if not checked immediately. The result was a chain of wars that consumed staggering resources. Campaigns in Italy, the Netherlands, and Germany were not brief. Many lasted for decades. Armies had to be raised, supplied, and paid year after year. Treasure from the Americas that could have built roads, ports, and schools instead fed soldiers, bought mercenaries, and funded sieges. Most of these conflicts did not decide Spain's survival. They decided status, influence, and religious uniformity. But the empire treated them as non-negotiable. It fought as if every battle were existential. Over time, the cost of never backing down hollowed out the capacity to maintain its own power. Hidden fact 3. Silver inflows quietly ruined Spain's own economy. New world mines in places like Potosi and Zacatecas pulled out unbelievable quantities of silver. That metal crossed the Atlantic, reached Seville, and entered the European system. On ledgers, Spain looked unimaginably wealthy. In reality, that metal passed through Spain more than it stayed there. Spanish merchants used silver to buy armor, textiles, weapons, and luxury goods from more industrialized regions. The Low Countries, northern Italy, later England, and France. Foreign bankers used Spanish silver to settle their own trades. Inside Spain, prices rose as the money supply expanded. Inflation ate into wages and savings. The empire became a pipeline. Precious metal entered at one end and left at the other, leaving inflated prices and weakened local industries behind. A country that should have used its access to minerals to build factories instead paid others to do its manufacturing. When silver shipments faltered, the hollowness of that model was exposed. Hidden fact 4. bankruptcy became routine. Not rare, Spain did not default once and recover. It defaulted repeatedly. In the late 16th and early 17th centuries, the monarchy suspended payments on its debts several times, each episode sending shockwaves through European finance. To manage war and court spending, the crown borrowed heavily from bankers in Genoa, Augsburg, and elsewhere. Loans were secured against future tax revenues and future treasure fleets. When war costs overshot expectations or shipments were delayed by storms and piracy, obligations could not be met. The solution was simple and brutal: stop paying, renegotiate, and start again. Every default damages trust. Lenders demanded higher interest rates or more control over royal income streams. More and more of each new influx of silver went straight to servicing old debt rather than building anything new. By normalizing bankruptcy, Spain turned credit, one of its great early advantages, into a chain it could not easily break. Hidden fact 5. The crown squeezed its strongest regions until they broke. The costs of the empire were not shared evenly. Castile, with its larger population and stronger institutions, carried most of the tax burden. Other territories under the Spanish crown, Aragon, Catalonia, Portugal before 1640. The Italian possessions fought hard to preserve older privileges and lighter obligations. When war and debt demands escalated, the monarchy leaned harder on the regions it could most easily tax. Castilian peasants and merchants saw ever higher levies. Productive regions like Catalonia faced growing demands without matching benefits. It was a political decision. Push where resistance is weakest. This imbalance sowed resentment that outlived any single monarch. By the 1640s, Catalonia revolted and Portugal broke away as an independent kingdom. The empire's own fiscal strategy helped fracture it. The state treated its most productive areas as a bottomless purse. Eventually, those areas chose to walk away. Hidden fact 6. Intolerance removed exactly the people. Spain most needed power in Madrid equated unity of faith with security. The Inquisition, expulsions, and permanent suspicion of impure blood were justified as necessary to protect the state and the soul of the nation. The cost went beyond morality. It crippled adaptability. Jewish communities expelled in 1492, conversos under pressure. And later Moriscos often included skilled financiers, doctors, craftsmen, and traders. Many left, taking networks, experience, and capital with them. Those who stayed faced limits on advancement and constant risk of accusation. The empire tightened its definition of who counted as a full member of society just as its economy was becoming more complex. At the moment when Spain needed every competent mind and every wide-reaching network, it narrowed the field. The result was an economy with fewer people able or willing to take risks and innovate inside the system. Hidden fact 7. Rising numbers hid falling real wealth during Spain's golden age. There was more money in circulation than ever before. Wages, prices, and rents all climbed in nominal terms. To many people, that felt like progress. A bigger paycheck means you're richer, until everything you buy costs even more. Inflation driven by silver meant that coins bought less each decade. A soldier, artisan, or small landlord might see their pay or income rise on paper while still struggling to afford basic necessities. Long-term contracts based on old price levels became traps. Goods produced inside Spain faced cost pressures that foreign competitors did not. From the royal court's perspective, the higher numbers created an illusion of scale. Budgets, taxes, and grants all used inflated figures. Underneath, the real capacity of the economy, what it could actually produce and sustain, was eroding. The empire confused monetary expansion with genuine prosperity and failed to notice how much ground it was losing. Hidden Fact 8. Rural Spain was drained to sustain urban and military demands. The empire's military and bureaucratic centers needed food, wool, leather, and men. That supply came largely from the countryside. As taxes and tithes increased, small farmers bore the weight. Many sold land to pay obligations. Others abandoned plots that no longer covered costs, swelling the ranks of landless laborers. Big landowners and church institutions accumulated more territory, but large estates were often managed for stability and status, not maximum productivity. Fields were left underused. Investment in long-term improvements like irrigation or soil renewal lagged. The rural base that had supported Spain's rise grew thin. When poor harvests struck, and they did, there was less margin to absorb them. Local shortages became famines. Grain had to be imported, often at high prices, draining yet more silver outward. Urban unrest and rural collapse were connected. They were both symptoms of a state that treated its countryside as a mine, not as the foundation of everything else.